welcome back to Catch All Media. My name is Andrew, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite labels as we get into my favorite releases from the Criterion Collection. This list could be about 20 titles long, but to keep it brief and fair, I'm going to make it 5 titles and 2 honorable mentions. So without waiting, let's go ahead and get into number 5. Alright, so starting off the list at number 5 is going to be Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious, starring Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant. Now, this is a movie that I watched a couple months ago, but it has stuck with me ever since then as one of my favorites, just due to Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant's performances alone. These two on screen have chemistry that I have seen in very few films. It's that good, and they just chew up every scene that they're in. It's a story about Cary Grant, who's in the U.S. government, and he is recruiting this younger woman whose father was a traitor to the Germans to try to get information out of her through another man. It's kind of convoluted, but I don't want to explain everything and give it away. So the plot line is, the story we follow is Cary Grant, with his relationship with this woman as they create a fake relationship that then evolves into something more real and a little bit more interesting in a precarious situation for Cary Grant, Ingrid Bergman, and the titular villain of the movie, if you would say. So with the Hitchcock movie, as we know, the suspense, the action, and the thrills are all there. But really what makes this film so important are those two performances by Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant, because they're just fantastic. Two of the best actors that I've watched in old Hollywood movies, or movies in general, and in this movie they're at their best. So, coming in at number 5, it's going to be Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious. And moving on to number 4, it's going to be Tokyo Drifter, directed by Seijun Suzuki. This movie is fantastic. I was not expecting it to be as good as it is going into it, because I really didn't know much about it. I had heard of Seijun Suzuki. I knew I wanted to get into his works, and this one seemed like it was pretty interesting and a good deal. So I bought it without knowing much about it, and when I watched it, I was blown away. It is a very interesting, very surreal Yakuza film. The colors, the visuals are very vibrant. They really carry this movie, I believe that, as well as some of the composition as far as the plot moves along pretty quickly. There's a fantastic song that rings through the whole movie as we follow our character. So a short synopsis of the movie would be, we follow a character who is the underboss to a Yakuza boss, and they're trying to go straight, and then they get tangled up with another Yakuza boss who's trying to assume their territory. So this whole movie plays out where we're trying to see whether or not our main character, who is this underboss, will stick to his straight lifestyle, or is he going to go back to the Yakuza life as this villain tries to assume their territory, as well as do some damage to them. And so we see that unfold, as well as this relationship that the underboss has with his former Yakuza boss, who is still his boss now that they've gone straight. But those relationships really drive this movie as well. So that relationship between our main character and his boss, as well as the relationship between our main character and a love interest who is kind of on the fringes of his life. So with that being said, what really, really makes this movie important is the visuals and the surreal aspect in which it's directed. This movie, as well as Branded to Kill, laid the groundworks for Seijun Suzuki to be fired by the Nikatsu Corporation. So that's how outlandish this one is, as well as Branded to Kill, which takes it up a notch. But if you're going to be looking for Seijun Suzuki films, I definitely would start with Tokyo Drifter. If we can get that glare off, I would start with Tokyo Drifter, and then I would move into Branded to Kill. Which brings us to our first honorable mention, which is Seijun Suzuki's Branded to Kill. This is a even more surreal movie than Tokyo Drifter, but it does play with the visuals very close to the way that we saw in Tokyo Drifter. This one is in black and white, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yes, it's been a few months since I watched it, but it is in black and white. And it is, to describe the plot would be unnecessary, because it won't be able to be described correctly. But it's a movie that you need to see for the surreal aspect. It's got a very David Lynchian mixed with Jean-Luc Godard, the visuals and the way that Seijun Suzuki played with it, and how surreal he made this and how nonsensical he made this movie is what got him fired from the Nikatsu Corporation. So if you're going to watch Tokyo Drifter, I definitely recommend watching Branded to Kill as well. Alright, so getting into number 3. For this list, I had to have a Bong Joon-ho film just because both of the releases that Criterion has put out from his filmography are fantastic. The movies themselves as well as the releases. So for number 3, we are going to go with Memories of Murder. This was a huge one that everybody picked up during the July and November sales of 2021, and for good reason, because it is a fantastic film. This is all about a serial killer who was roaming around South Korea back in the 70s and 80s, and he struck a bunch of victims, all of them female, placing them in these strange positions, and we see this disgusting serial killer stalking these people in South Korea. And the story unfolds about cops, and it's got 2 cops in the lead character roles, and they're tracking this serial killer, but the whole time they're tracking the wrong people, and it kind of plays out as a social commentary about South Korea during this time, and really the police brutality and the things that were going on during this time that we might not have really known about here in the States. So I think it's a great time capsule into South Korea during those times, and I think as well it's a fantastic movie from a narration standpoint, from a narrative standpoint, as well as the visuals, and it's very funny too, when it really maybe shouldn't be, but it is funny for the right reasons. So it's definitely one that I'd recommend if you haven't seen a Bong Joon-ho film, or if you've seen Parasite, but you haven't seen Memories of Murder, I definitely would pick it up. So number 3, Memories of Murder by Bong Joon-ho. I know I said I had 2 honorable mentions, but it's actually 3. So let's get into the second one here, and this is one of the latest releases from Criterion in the last 6 months, and that is Uncut Gems by the Safdie brothers. I had not seen this film before Criterion released it. I know I'm late, but it's just one that had slipped through my eyes. So when I saw it was being released by Criterion, I picked up the 4K Blu-ray set, and I was extremely excited to see what everyone had been clamoring about for years, as far as Adam Sandler and his performance, as well as this movie as a whole, and I was not disappointed. The story, we follow Howard, who possesses this opal, who he believes this is upwards of millions of dollars, but we see how this plays out, as far as Howard is a very manic and very self-deprecating, sabotaging kind of a human being, and we see this crazy lifestyle that he leads, and the whole movie really feels like we are Howard experiencing his anxiety, experiencing his toil, experiencing his victories, and experiencing his tragedies as well. So the whole movie is very tense, very entertaining, on the go. The pacing is incredible. It really makes you feel very anxious at times, which for some of you that could be a trigger warning, but I'm a person that has pretty high anxiety, and I was able to get through it just fine. So it's, to each their own as far as that goes. But what a fantastic film, and Adam Sandler was perfect in this role. Someone growing up with Adam Sandler in The Waterboy, and all these roles that he played, grown-ups, all these crazy, goofy roles, to see him in this kind of a role was spectacular, and I think he did exactly what they needed him to do. So that is the second honorable mention, would be Uncut Gems. We're now into the top 2, and we're going to finish both of these off as Hong Kong films, as Chinese films. The first one is from Hong Kong, and is a double set of Jackie Chan Police Story 1 and Police Story 2. I had never seen a Jackie Chan, a Hong Kong Jackie Chan movie before I saw Police Story. And immediately when I watched Police Story, I popped in Police Story 2 right away. These are both just so much fun. Jackie Chan, the ability that he had to put together a movie that had great pacing, it was really funny, the action was spectacular, the plot is not mind-numbing, everything was just done excellently. And to be able to see this side of Jackie Chan, when I grew up watching Rush Hour, and I grew up watching The Medallion and The Spy, or whatever that movie was with him, to see him in these kind of elements, in his own element, doing his DIY Jackie Chan projects, it's just beautiful, because he's so talented. To hear him sing the song, to see him do all the stunts, to know that he directed the movie, he put all this together, is just absolutely awe-inspiring, and it's inspiring in general because Jackie Chan is one hell of a talent. So with that being said, I definitely recommend, if you have not seen any Jackie Chan Hong Kong movies, or if you have seen some but you haven't seen Police Story, definitely recommend picking up number 2 on the list, Police Story 1 and 2. All right, before we talk about number 1, let's get into the last recommendation or honorable mention, and that is Le Samurai, directed by Jean-Pierre Melville. And this actor is amazing. This is Alain Delon, who plays Jeff Costello. What a fantastic movie Le Samurai is. The plot line, we follow a hitman who lives his lifestyle similar to the samurai code, the samurai way, and he goes in to perform another hit, just like he always does, and things kind of go awry, and he leaves a witness. This leads to his employers trying to hunt him down and come after him, and we see this whole thing play out. But the thing about this movie that is so interesting is you see from this, the inspiration for The Killer, directed by John Woo, which we talked about, Ghost Dog, directed by, what's his name? Jim Jarmusch. We see a lot of these elements from these later movies that were taken from Le Samurai, and the visuals in this are incredible. The colors, the themes, the way that they compose shots, everything in a scene is all black and white and gray, and a lot of these scenes are lived in, and we're allowed to sit there and stay with them. The scenes breathe. We get time with our main character to really understand his motives and understand that he's living kind of a lifeless life, and we see this play out. And the way that the story goes and the places that we go in this movie are very entertaining and very interesting, and it's a very well put together and told story. So that's definitely one that if you've not seen before and you enjoy Ghost Dog, or you enjoy The Killer, you enjoy hitman kind of movies with a twist, Le Samurai is a great option. We're at number 1, and we're heading back to China for a film that I just watched about 2 months ago, and absolutely has become one of my favorite films that I've ever seen. And for this, we are talking about Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love. What a beautiful, beautiful film this was. From the way that it's composed, to the story told, to the use of the score, to these lingering shots in slow motion where we really get to see the characters interact, and we get to feel their emotions, and we understand what Wong Kar-wai is trying to tell us and what we're trying to get out of this movie. So the plot of this movie is you have two relationships in this movie that are the focal point. Two couples move into an apartment complex and they become neighbors, and we see how they interact and what unfolds as they live in close quarters and how the story plays out. This is a story about love. This is a story about betrayal. This is a story about life and human beings in relationships and how these things play out and how they work. It's a beautiful film overall. I can't recommend it enough, and I don't want to say any more because I want people to go in knowing as little as possible and to follow the story thread by thread, because it had me on the edge of my seat, and it's not a thriller. So the fact that it had me on the edge of my seat because I was so interested and I was so bought into the story, because Wong Kar-wai does not give you any option but to buy in, says a lot. It's a fantastic film and one I cannot recommend enough. That is why it's number 1 on my favorite releases from the Criterion Collection. So what did you guys think of the list? If you had any of these on your list personally, leave it down below. If you had anything that wasn't on this list that would make your list up, let me know down below, because I'm curious to see whether you guys agree with some of these, or whether you've got completely left field answers that I could watch. So this breeds conversation. That's what this is all about. So let me know what you guys think. And if you're coming back, I appreciate you checking it out. And if you're new, I appreciate you finding it. Maybe subscribe if you want to see some more, because I'll be cranking out some more videos. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.